Oh, for the love of... Time travel does not work that way! You had one job, writers. One job! I complain as... well, look at the tape box. The label is Gorgum spelled backwards.
It's Goblin spelled backwards! Oh my god!
I mean, yeah, it's Japan and English isn't their main language, but English lettering is used often enough I would think someone would have picked up on it. The video in question is the music video to a new idol singer, who Gorgum has co-opted to insert subliminal messages into, which is driving the sales through the roof with the order to buy more of the tape and encourage everyone they know to... view it. Wait a second. Wasn't that the plot to the Josie and the Pussycats live-action movie? Yes, I saw that movie. I watched reruns of the show as a kid. I found it silly then, too. Anyways, the obvious next step to the plan with the next single is to have all those affected pledge undying loyalty to Gorgum. Kotaro, seeing the music vid in passing, notes the odd glint in the singer's eyes in certain moments, and analyzes the tape, finding frequencies in it that match known subliminal signals. Instead, he follows a distribution van, which tips off Gorgum. The van redirects him into a trap where he finds the singer, only for it to be revealed that the singer is the Millipede Mutant.
Honey, you got real ugly.
Well, sort of. The mutant is taking the form of a captured girl, but the fight is held off. Like before with the gold-spinning scarabs, the indoctrinated followers cease to do anything but be slaves to the playing of the videos, and the buying of the videos as they come out. The newest of which paints a target on Kotaro's head. Kind of unnecessary, as the video has also been ramped up to put the writer partially under the thrall as well. This is where the Millipede Mutant makes his mistake, revealing itself so Kotaro can fight it. And as expected, when the Kaijin dies, its influence somehow goes with it. Oh, and the girl the mutant was using interference for is also rescued. Next, the Salamander Mutant is out and about attacking things and eating people. Seriously, eating people. When next strikes, Kotaro intervenes in its assault, but the Salamander is one of those Kaijin that can spew acid. In the form of sparks? Okay, as they've done special effects upgrades, I can understand wanting to use them over what's been discarded, but the foam from the older series would have been more appropriate for showcasing acids. The sparks do end up being a detriment as well, as it accidentally sets something flammable on fire, and it can't stand the blaze. Despite acids not being inherently flammable, or known for causing the kind of thermal reaction that permits visible burning. The salamander retreats, but when Kotaro tries to follow it, he ends up tripping a bunch of traps. These traps aren't set by Gorgum for once, but a master and student duo who use the area to train. Kotaro initially sees them as suspicious, asking to tag along and learn something. The line and context of this episode seems a bit off, but this was the year Ranma 1/2 and the Karate Kid films hit Japan, and some cultural bleed over does occur in this genre, but usually it's what inspires a theme, not an episode. I'm pointing this out as the supposed master, not actually a competent martial artist, so he's getting the exercises for his grandson where he can. He's explained to be a major wuss, but he loves his grandson too much to disappoint him and correct the misconception. This is about where the focus of the episode returns to the monster, who attacks the kid, and as a wuss, the old man is naturally terrified of the Kaijin. But later, after Kotaro rescues him, man's up to defend his grandson, while the rider is otherwise indisposed. When Black returns to fight, he knocks the salamander into the water before breaking a canister of oil into it, and tricking the mutant to setting the liquids ablaze. After that, it's ended in the usual fashion. Episode 41 I do not like at all. It's not structurally bad like 29 was, but it's a symptom of a larger problem I keep running into. And that problem is few Japanese writers I have encountered understand how to write a time travel story. While there are some very good tales that use it, Mirai Sentai Time Ranger being up there for one, it's certainly the minority. Whereas stories originating from other countries have a more positive-leaning balance of using the story device than Japan does, where it seems like 1 in every 10 stories is even in the ballpark of being good. And that is an optimistic estimate. This tale focuses on a Gorgum device that can affect time in a bunch of ways that scramble the timeline more than the Time War on Doctor Who. Here's a question. If Gorgum has had access to this device all of this time, why didn't they use it to, go back in time and stop Kotaro Nobuhiko's father from screwing with their conversion? Well, part of the answer is because it was taken from the mutant it was bestowed to, the Cobra Mutant, by a pair of samurai from the country's distant past. I'd say the mid-1800s at the latest, but likely earlier. I have no idea how these two idiots got it, but they simply want to get home, and yet are continuously followed by this mutant, meaning it does not need this device to time travel. Yeah! In the chaos caused by them trying to get it to work right, the pair pick up a kid named Mamoru, who recently has been acting out because one of Gorgum's plots got his father killed. The time changes aren't retroactive, so everyone is noting them as they occur. But since Kotaro's been endowed with the Kingstone, which is likely to be older than dinosaur bones, he is immune to the effects of time manipulation. That is, of course, the second and most primary reason why Gorgum hasn't used this device to do that and rewrite time so the Battle of Century Kings went to plan. It would be really nice if any writer at Toei after this who used this character would fucking remember that. And there's a showcase when they hit a switch that slows relative time in the city to a standstill. No, not like that! Wait, does this mean Kotaro's immune to the powers of Kronos' pause? This deserves a thought experiment, but with how much Toei screws up in mass crossover events and pretty much all of them forget Kotaro's immune to time manipulation, I doubt that we'll ever see that. Kotaro catches them, the group being thrown briefly into the time stream, where the samurai apologize for their antics. I do like how the production team tries to depict the flow of time, a swirling tube of water, each molecule depicting a moment in time as it swirls by. It's not the wibbly-wobbly timey-wimey ball of stuff, but for 1988 it's a fair depiction. In the time stream, Kotaro sees Nobuhiko on their 19th birthday, and is tempted to alter time and stop him from being changed into Shadow Moon. It is an interesting character moment, one of the few times the early writers have had a moment of selfishness, as he does end up going through with it, and I can't fault him. His failures before with respect to Nobuhiko have weighed on him since Shadow Moon awoke, but the Cobra Mutant wipes his attempts at the change and pulls him back into the time stream, attempting to send him adrift. The lot lands on a clock-shaped platform, Mamoru getting chained down, and the clock's hands meant to slice him in twain. The samurai distract the mutant long enough for Kotaro to transform, before they focus on freeing the boy from the hands of time. When Black defeats the mutant, the bubble in the time stream begins to collapse. But a portal opens up, sending the lot back to 1988 faster than you can say 1.21 gigawatts. At first the samurai are bummed, however, one last gate opens, allowing the two to return to their home time. Time is supposedly restored to normal, and all without a defective time train getting involved. Following this, it's another tale with espers in it. The Fly Mutant possesses the elder of two brothers with psychic talents, granting him the power to manifest dead mutants in the physical world, which then begin an all-out siege. As they're being blatant in the attack, Kotaro is alerted and goes to fight them, only to discover the revived mutants can become intangible at will due to them, well, being dead. Better go call a ghost then. Takeru should be able to bust them. In retreat, Kotaro comes across the younger brother, Makoto. No, not that Makoto. Who is naturally worried about his sibling, named Yuki. No, not that Yuki. And not that one either. But due to the trouble Yuki has gotten into in the past due to his powers, any Makoto might possess have been subconsciously sealed, and it doesn't help that right now, he's scared. As the attacks continue, however, Yuki gathers the willpower in his controlled body to send out a distress call to Makoto, the younger boy using it to track him down with Kotaro's help. As Kotaro holds off the phantom mutants, Makoto successfully unseals his own powers, freeing Yuki from the Fly Mutant and causing the phantom mutants to be banished back to the Shadow Realm. And without a human body to hide within, the Fly Mutant is squashed on the window pane of the road sector. Following this, it's... my god. This is arguably the most evil plan yet in Kamen Rider! Low rent, well-sized apartments!
Diabolical. For you to understand how expensive this is, you should know Tokyo is the most expensive city to live in on the planet due to a combination of the population density, and in the 80s, a group of real estate speculators caused a massive inflation in property costs in a short-sighted attempt at a get-rich scheme that went horribly for everyone and eventually crashed their economy. As a result, the going rate for a one-bedroom apartment in 2013, when I originally reviewed this show, went for about $1,700 American before any utility costs. Whereas the one bed I started occupying in late 2017, $680. And the only utilities I get charged for are electric and internet. Thus, this is art imitating life in a story inspired by social commentary and current events. These people are renting multi-room A-grade apartments for the cost of much smaller spaces in a time period where costs were so artificially inflated, other places of a comparable scale would be 5 to 10 times more expensive than this.
And thus, the complexes are being swarmed by applicants.
Evil!
And to really prove it, at night, the bands that operate some of the complex's remote appliances hijacks the wearer's brains, leading them into the elevators, which take them to an underground complex where they are drained of their life energy, which Gorgon plans to use to enhance their mutants.
Or you could, use it to grow Gorongame fruit to feed them.
A kid named Rio somehow escapes the effects each night, trying to warn people the next day. But as I said, with rates this low, citizens don't care if the place is evil, as it's still less malicious than the real estate market of the period. Kotaro overhears Ryo's pleas, and that night, infiltrates the complex and finds the way to the underground base, which is a geofront. I swear, I've seen too many series, or Hideaki Anno took some inspiration from this pyramid and ecosystem when designing the nerve base in Evangelion. However, Kotaro trips the alarms, being attacked by the Bat Mutant, the place's guards, and the Stag Beetle Mutant. Above ground, Kyoko and Katsumi are revealed to have followed Kotaro, and stumble their way into the underground complex as well. Kotaro transforms and ends up confronted by Shadow Moon, gloating over his plan before challenging Black to continue the ceremonial battle. Black refuses, though that's distracted by Kyoko and Katsumi tripping the alarms like Kotaro did earlier. The distraction lets Black destroy the transmitters for the bracelets, releasing the affected from the controls, and with the girls helping guide them all out. Though the base self-destructs from this, it for some reason does not collapse the geofront like such explosions should, which should have caused everything above it to collapse to a giant sinkhole. Then, Gorgon begins experimenting with transportation technology, whose frequencies are screwed with due to a resourceful kid named Isau's repairs to his remote control car. Yeah, apparently his fix changed the RC frequency. I find it a bit silly, as though RC frequencies are pretty much unused. They do coincide with that of CB radios, and RC vehicles had been a form of entertainment for kids for years in the 80s.
With such a common source of interference, I would think they would have used a different band or shielded their equipment.
Regardless, due to Isau's repairs, his controller screws with the accuracy of the experiment, making the transportation fields run wild, and dropping the kid in their midst. He runs, one of the doors in their complex returning him home, after Kotaro, who heard the cries for help with his enhanced hearing, opens them. Kotaro, for once acting like a sane adult with his suspicions, thinks Isao is making it up, making this likewise a completely out-of-character act for the guy whose catchphrase is some iteration of, "This must be a Gorgon blot!"
Unless it involves the Crisis Empire at the very least.
But further experimentations by Gorgon removes Kotaro's skepticism, and the intended point of the teleporter is made obvious later, as Gorgon plans to use it to flood Tokyo with more water than the drainage and sewer systems can withstand. After all, there are a lot of underground tunnels in the city, even ones that don't have the mass transit system on a scale Tokyo does. With them flooded, a lot of things can go wrong. And before anyone thinks of things like the Saitama Metropolitan Area Outer Underground Discharge Channel, which would have controlled such waters, well, construction on that thing didn't begin until 1992, and was commissioned because flooding of the city's major waterways during rain and typhoon seasons actually were an issue back then, according to my research.
Certainly more than enough of a problem to be an inspiration for this episode's plot, making this again a story inspired by current events and being used as social commentary.
The Greater Mutants figure out how to get to Isao, breaking his RC toys, allowing their teleporter to become stable. And as Isao delayed their plans, they're going to punish him with death. But as by this point Kotaro has seen the random warp gates, he's onto the case. With the teleporter operational, however, Gorgum completely controls the pace of the fight, changing his location every time he tries to strike at any of the mutants. It even disables the road sector, which can't properly navigate the teleport storms. But even with that, the road sector's computer still functions enough for it to analyze the transportation field and disrupt it, letting Black save Isao and warp him to the facility, where the rider destroys the machine. Episode 45 opens on an anti-feministic tirade on women's place in society.
Yeah, Japan has historically not been that progressive a nation since it ended being isolationist, but even they have their own standards for feminism. And this episode does not showcase such.
A woman sets a collection of flowers in a classroom, the petals spewing a gas that affects the students, turning the girls away from caring for their jobs and charges as a result. This is Bishium's plan, finding a path to disrupt a full half of society by destroying women's nurturing side with the plants. You know, there are certain standards and expectations society places with respect to gender roles, and a lot of which are really stupid.
This is one of them, and this entire episode pretty much runs off of distilled stereotypes that, from my research, were not even reflective of the times. Hell, a lot of what's seen as sexist oppression of women, they got that from the West.
I think the dialogue was more to refer to women's more natural empathy with their children, but this is also bull, as due to generations of natural selection, we are instinctually driven to protect and help infants. Suppressing it in mothers should just have the father step up. But in this episode, it results in men being completely incompetent in roles believed to be shoved off on the female population.
Except a lot of them are things men do perform, so what is this even trying to fucking say? Guys, learn from Shiro Amiya. It's not that hard to do housework.
Kotaro gets a lead from Kyoko about an all-girls school which seems to have avoided the effects, finding Bishium in disguise, conducting a flower arranging class. Okay. The flowers release their gases, turning the students wild and attacking Kotaro, allowing Bishium to get away and kidnap Kyoko, leaving a message that would lead Kotaro to a standoff in a pollen-flooded realm. Bishium throws Kotaro a knife, ordering him to rip out his Kingstone unless he wants Kyoko to die. But giving Kotaro a weapon? Not a smart move, as he skillfully throws it so it stabs into her arm, distracting the mutant long enough to save Kyoko. The two fight, Bishium initially having the advantage with her flight and ranged energy attacks, but she screws up when she locks Black into a grapple, pleading her watching comrades to strike them both down. It would cost Bishium her life, but ensure Shadow Moon's victory. Shadow Moon hesitates before acquiescing, shooting a massive beam at them, but Black shifts their positions, the blast mostly hitting Bishium. Fatally wounded, the Batwoman dies, stunning her fellow greater mutants. And the Creation King is not happy one of his loyal generals has died, even Shadow Moon sharing in their punishment. So yes, unfortunately this terrible episode is part of the story arc. Great job, guys! With one of their number down, Baram endeavors to improve himself, using an abandoned lot as his training field to hone his skills. Daram, however, is more worried about a recent stellar phenomena, a series of sunspots, which are some of the largest in human record. With Kotaro, Kyoko and Katsumi have thrown him an impromptu party because, well, it's his 20th birthday, for once giving us an actual time frame for how long the Gorgum conflict has occurred. Though the party also serves as a melancholic reflection of what they've lost, namely Nobuhiko, which triggers another round of flashbacks. Seriously, I've left them out of the reviews proper, but flashbacks are repeated so often in this series that they can, as I said at the beginning, be counted as their own transformation sequences. Out of nowhere, both Kotaro and Shadow Moon are simultaneously attacked by grasshoppers, mirroring the occurrence a year previously, leading to them holding a conversation with the more properly awoken Creation King. He tells them the window for the ceremonial battle to occur is fast closing. In his next life, the Creation King was the 2014 reboot Dr. Serizawa. Daram and Baram also play witness to a prophecy, that if Shadow Moon succeeds, Gorgon will grow stronger than any time before, the oceans of the world disappearing beneath the destroyed remains of humanity they will build upon. However, the whale mutant overhears this, realizing all Marinoid mutants like himself will suffer if this comes to pass. And Aram's own words with how disposable the mutants are drives him to have a conflict within himself. At the coast, Baram approaches the whale mutant, wanting his assistance in his fight with Black. Thus, the whale mutant attacks a collection of humans, drawing Kotaro out for Baram and biting the rider with an adhesive foam he can produce. But when Baram moves to strike using his tusks, he stabs the whale mutant as well. Baram had to choose the potential betrayal the whale mutant could commit, so decided to kill two birds with one stone. In retaliation, the whale mutant uses his adhesive foam attack on Baram, binding him while freeing the rider, and allowing Black to hit the feline mutant with his punch-kick combo. Baram survives long enough to try and attack once more, but collapses, with Black asking why the whale mutant helped him, and the Kaijin explaining about the foreseen future if Gorgon would win. In gratitude, Kotaro helps whale mutant to the sea, where he can hide and recover, asking Kotaro to help protect the oceans. In the meantime, earthquakes and other natural disasters are booting up in relation to the Creation King and the sunspots. For the stellar event is known to Gorgon. Like the eclipse a year prior, the sunspots of this type are cyclical, and an indicator that the Creation King's life is soon to end, and he must pass on the collective power of the Creation Kings before they end. And that can only be done when one Century King stands bearing both Kingstones. With Gorgon no longer having the time to play around, their active units deploy to spread chaos. The Shonen warriors from twice before are trying to attack the back mutants, but to no avail. Kotaro covers them from getting killed, having the lot retreat, and the siege has apparently been going on for a while, as people have withdrawn to whatever safe haven they can find. It's gotten to the point where Kyoko and Katsumi have long accepted there is no hope of getting Nobuhiko back from within Shadow Moon, begging Kotaro to face him and end this. But Kotaro is hesitant to. It's hard to even think about taking the life of family with your own hands, and Kotaro honestly doesn't know if he can go through with it until he is at the moment itself, because he still believes he can save Nobuhiko. But the others are right. This can't continue. So, before heading out, he checks the condition of the battle hopper and road sector, informing the pair that he may not make it out this time, which draws a physical response from the bikes. The next day, Kotaro goes to face Shadow Moon, once more begging the Century King to return to being Nobuhiko. Shadow Moon really responds by firing on Kotaro, and thus their battle is joined. Initially, it appears the two are evenly matched, one from experience, the other from being bathed in his Kingstone's power for months without end, only for the Satan Saber to repeatedly break the stalemate in Shadow Moon's favor. But this is taking too long for the Creation King's liking, so he intervenes, reverting Shadow Moon to Nobuhiko. This has Kotaro drop his guard long enough for the king to change him back and deal damage to the rider. Black and the Shadow Moon charging their respective punch and kick attacks, with Shadow Moon winning out due to the injury dealt. And finally, Shadow Moon uses the Satan Saber to pierce Black's armor, stabbing right above the Kingstone and appearing to kill Kotaro. The Creation King orders Shadow Moon to recover Black's Kingstone, but the rider reverts to his human form, making Shadow Moon stay his hand. It appears the Creation King's ruse has backfired. The scant moments of being Nobuhiko again have reawakened the man within Shadow Moon. Thus, he declares he will become the new Creation King without desecrating his fallen brother's corpse, walking away from the site. Kotaro hasn't actually passed on as of yet, returning to his rider form, somehow, as Kyoko and Katsumi hover over his body. With his last breaths, he asks the pair to leave Japan and stay safe, as no one will be here to protect them now.
二人がいたから僕は今まで頑張ってこれたありがとう
An earthquake swallows Black's body, somehow carrying him into a river and washing him out to sea. Well,
Series over. Evil wins!
Nope, though episode 48 is mostly a clip show, as the whale mutant recovers Black's body and takes him to a hidden cove, using an elixir long kept secret by the Meridoid mutants to heal his injuries.
Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. Please open his mouth.
As the elixir does its work, he dreams of all the events that have led him here, while Gorgum's rampage continues. The refugees piling onto every conceivable means of travel off the island nation. Kyoko and Katsumi specifically making their way to a cruise liner that will take them to America. Even odds it'll be attacked by Dr. Heinler. Shadow Moon prepares for his ascension to the Creation King, only for the Creation King to punish him for not heeding his words. Like I said, it takes both of the King Stones to endow a Century King with the powers of a Creation King, and the ceremonial battle is to choose the stronger successor. So now, Gorgum is on the hunt for Black's body. But it's too late. Kamen Rider Black, at the beginning of episode 49, fully revives, stronger than before. Like with Shadow Moon, his recovery has flooded his body with the energy of the Kingstone, so he has ultimately taken a level in badass. He thanks the whale mutant for saving his life, but the bat mutant and Daram have caught on to their location due to the light the Kingstone produced when he awoke. They get out just in time, but the whale mutant is ambushed by Daram, Kotaro having to defend him. Black easily fights the last general off, but the remaining civilians in the area assault whale mutant, which is admittedly understandable, as their nation has been ravaged by his kind. They hide, but Kotaro moves on to help others. And while alone, the whale mutant is ambushed by a gang that has chosen to work for Gorgum in order to survive, who in turn attack and capture the mutant to turn it over to their superiors to secure their lives. But the latter are attacked by the bat mutant, as, yeah, they were deceived. No one is getting out alive. Kotaro shows to fight, and as whales are a species that also use echolocation to navigate, the allied mutant screws with the bat's own abilities, making him fly wildly into Daram. And while Daram's psychic blasts deflect any attacks towards him, Black can use his Kingstone Flash to counter even that, and finally allow him to make physical contact with Daram with his punch and kick, destroying the last general. Though the bat mutant retreats, allowing him to inform Shadow Moon that Black lives, he too collapses from the exertion and his injuries. While it may have been the longest run of any common kaijin, even the bat can't defy the eventual fate of all that face the riders. Whale Mutant knows where Gorgum's true base is, so 50 episodes into the series, Kotaro is finally led to his long-awaited objective. In America, Kyoko and Katsumi hear that Kotaro is alive, Kyoko making plans to return, with Katsumi stopping her, as the point of them leaving was to honor Kotaro's last wish that they stay safe, and putting themselves in jeopardy would only hurt Kotaro in the long run. So for now, they have to stay where they are. And unfortunately, they never return. Outside Gorgum's base, a trio of unnamed mutants try to flee the organization, only to be stopped and cut down by the Sickleback mutant. Apparently there's been a bit of a schism forming between the mutants, started by the whale mutant's defection, and Sickleback is charged with cutting down the numbers. As Kotaro and the whale mutant reach the base, he is thus available to greet them and take down their chief traitors, though it's stopped from attacking Kotaro by the Creation King, who whisks him away to the base's innards, forcing Kotaro to watch the bloodbath, as whale mutant is no match. He once more begs Kotaro to honor his wish and protect the seas, before Whale Mutant dies from his injuries. Resolved to end this, Shadow Moon and Black engage in a short fight, but are once more stopped by the Creation King. You know, if you're on a time limit, it's not wise to waste it with senseless monologuing. This time, it is to tell them that with the ancestral power collected, the next Creation King will have outgrown the nest of the Earth and have the power to take over the universe.
Of course!
Oh, and the Creation King is shown to be a giant demonic heart. Why? I have no idea. Time is almost up, so the Creation King gives Shadow Moon a surge of power, as Black has once more rejected Gorgum's ideals, and sends them outside for their fight. Black is once more outmatched, but this time has the good sense to call in assistance from the Battle Hopper. Surprisingly, Shadow Moon's power allows it to take control of the bike, as, well, it was meant to be controlled by a Century King. Black is left aghast at this, hearing Battle Hopper's heart crying. But by remembering that the Kingstone Flash has interrupted such acts in the past, he uses it to disrupt Shadow Moon's control of the vehicle, freeing it. But in retaliation, Shadow Moon used the Satan Saber to tear the Battle Hopper apart. The Battle Hopper rams Shadow Moon in a suicide attack, the two of them exploding. And in the Century King's distraction, the enraged Black Rider kicks him not once, but twice, over the loss of his longest ally. Shadow Moon is forced into retreat with this newest injury, but in the wreckage, some of Battle Hopper remains. With its last moments of life, and through its own force of will, Battle Hopper has evolved, speaking its first words of true sentience before fading away.
Kamen Rider, you will cry when the non-human companion dies.
Black picks up Shadow Moon's forgotten Satan Saber, intending to end this once and for all. Kotaro storms the base, finding Shadow Moon still trying to recover, with Nobuhiko briefly breaking through once again. Shadow Moon forces his other side down and tries to overpower Black with his Shadow Kick, but due to his injuries, Black easily counters this, ultimately striking Shadow Moon's Kingstone. And, like Black, the damage to the Kingstone leaves Shadow Moon paralyzed and dying. Knowing he is going to die, Shadow Moon asks for his Satan Saber, so when he descends to Hell, he will have his weapon to fight off the demons of the realm at his side. At the end of it all, however, Kotaro lost. He defeated his enemies, but he didn't succeed in what he kept fighting for all of this time. He's lost his family, his parents are dead, Kyoko is gone, and Nobuhiko dies with the monster Gorgum created, still in control to his last breath.
一生後悔して生きていくんだ俺こそ次期創世王だ
Black laments the loss of his brother, but the sunspots are ending, and the Creation King's successor has been chosen. It encourages Black to tear the Kingstone from Shadow Moon, but like Shadow Moon, Black refuses to desecrate the body of his brother in such a manner. Black descends to face the Creation King himself, it once more ordering him to gather the Kingstones, but Kotaro is having none of it, and in retaliation, the Creation King threatens to descend to the Earth's core and unleash his power. If he will not have a successor, then nothing Black values shall live.
Come here prepared to fight a madman, and instead you found a god?
Problem is, this conflict has already taken all from him. He has nothing to lose by making sure nothing and no one is ever threatened by it again. But even now, the Creation King's power is too strong, a barrier forming over him to stop any attack. Black calls the road sector, and its attacks are repelled. His only resort is to steal away Shadow Moon's Satan Saber, using it to pierce the barrier and the Creation King itself. The single strike mortally wounds the dying being, the release of power causing the base to collapse. While Black escapes on the road sector, there isn't time to retrieve Shadow Moon's body from the rubble, and he is buried beneath the crumbling ruin. Outside, Kotaro holds the Satan Saber up and calls out to Nobuhiko, throwing it up and allowing the sword to return to its master, and to never be seen again. Rain falls, washing away the damage of Gorgum as the citizens of Japan return to their homes and lives. At least, the ones that want to return. For in the empty cafe, Kotaro once more reminisces over the last year, and the way his life has changed. And with nothing left here for him, it's time for one last change as well.
さよならみんな楽しい思い出
The last shot of the series is Kotaro boarding his bike like the riders before him, heading out to find a new direction to his life. And with any luck, something to fill the hole this conflict has carved within him.
Kamen Rider Black is a fantastic series, having the fewest number of episodes I've found worth mocking for their dumbness, though there is always something to snark at. The story is written in a mature manner that allows an audience of any age to enjoy it, and the characters each get moments to shine, even the bad guys.
The monster designs are what's more unique, lacking the majority of the flawed elements that make you easily see them as people in suits, and more coming off as operations of nature that have chosen to take on a more humanoid form, much like the Beastmen in that respect. Gorgum has defined goals that make sense to why they try to put as much effort into defeating Black as they do to try and take over. They need the Kingstone from him to move forward their succession. So like the other riders where they could, say, banish them to another dimension for which there is no return, they actually need to kill him. Gorgum tries a wide variety of plans too. Some stock, others rather original, and some based on social commentary, though a number of them do start to fall apart when analyzed. But with the way they are presented, you get wrapped up in the story, and the breakdown more fridge logic instead of being readily apparent. Though there is an alternate storyline I'd like to address from this, as the writers did begin to look into it as the series neared its wrap-up. The division between Gorgum's mutant forces, starting with the Whale Mutant. Though, it's a bit more apparent in Rebellion with Birigenia. I can see the dissension starting earlier on, just as the Creation King's prophecy being shown to Shadow Moon when he awakens, and Whale Mutant overhearing it then. With many of the mutants' required ecosystems destroyed in that future, their loyalties would be tested, and the no-tolerance of the generals would lead to a civil war. A faction could potentially approach Kotaro for assistance, and with his kinder heart, Kotaro would accept to be their rallying point in exchange for these mutants not attacking humanity, turning the ceremonial battle into a war of ideals between the Gorgum factions. I know that would never work with the way the Kamen Rider shows of the Showa era were structured with respect to morality and the treatment of monster alliances, but it's something I'd like to see at some point with regards to these shows, instead of a single rebel as a regular, and then smaller appearing, more benign entities. Regardless of all that, Shadow Moon is in and of himself the best villain of Showa Kamen Rider, and possibly the franchise. On top of being powerful, intelligent, and cunning, his personal connection to Kotaro... his personal connection to Kotaro and the struggle between them, beyond that of just enemies, is what makes the show long before he even appears. He is both victim and abuser, puppet and commander, ruled by the doctrines programmed into him, but with what little we see of Nobuhiko inside of him, he wants to stop, desperately needs to stop, but he can't. It won't let him. And thus, you empathize with Kotaro's wish to save Nobuhiko from himself, and again empathize when he fails, because that goal has been what has been sought all along. It's never forgotten, but for the longest time, there's nothing Kotaro can do about it until it's too late. And that kind of emotional connection to a villain is something that makes him stand out all the more. Kotaro himself is the quintessential nice guy, only upstaged to my knowledge within the franchise with Yusuke Godai. And in hindsight, you can't help but see this as a more mild and yet more personal case of Kuga's later shown break the nice guy's smile ending. As Kotaro tries to help people however he can, from being the designated pack mule for Kyoko and Katsumi, to intervening in gang attacks, and naturally volunteering for community outreach and to lead children's programs. Yeah, nearly every writer in this era does that at some point, but it seems more natural for Kotaro to do so. He lives rather minimalistically as well, taking up shack in the storage room he stores his supplies and vehicles in. His fighting style is also rather minimalistic, striking hard when he can, and his abilities reflect this as well, limited to the alert point that detects mutant activity, power stripes, the multi-eye and sensor ear, and the Kingstone Flash. Along with the Rider Punch and Kick and his vehicles, that's all the abilities he uses. Each have a wide range of utility, and he utilizes them well, not needing for others to counter his enemies, at this time at any rate. Katsumi and Kyoko are more integral to the story with how they relate to Kotaro and Nobuhiko than the past companions, having a special stake in these events, and again due to that bridging connection. They aren't allies that help out from a sense of duty, they are, as I've said, family. The opinion and well-being of the others in their trio matter on a more personal level than the other main casts. short of maybe the relationship between Shigeru Joe and Yuriko Misaki. In addition to his patrols in the news, the pair routes information for Kotaro to use towards tracking down Gorgon plots, and both are portrayed as being intelligent people, Kyoko having deduced Kotaro's dual identity before it was revealed to her, and I do like that she accepts him without a thought. The actresses chosen do know how to act and emote, which puts them above a swath of secondary and recurring characters in the series. And with a few years' reflection on the series, it still remains tragic that they are never reunited with Kotaro as the show is concluding. But their reasons for not returning are understandable, though I still say they could have tried to contact him once everything settled down. But despite the better stance with respect to female supporting characters, Black does have the highest number of notably sexist plots for episodes, which makes for an odd dichotomy, and I solely place that blame on Junichi Miyashita, as I said, for he wrote every single one of them. And as normal when I wrap up a series when I do them in order, the writer power rankings. How does the second to last of the TV Showa heroes match up with the rest of the writers? First off, I'm not counting the Satan Saber in this analysis. Like the Lightning Sword at the end of Super 1, it's not part of his normal arsenal, so I'm not going to add it to his roster for this analysis. Against Super 1, well, Kotaro does have a few advantages. Kotaro's transformation is shown to release a lot of thermal energy, meaning both the Super 1's thermal hands are not going to be as effective. The Power Stripes can even negate any advantage Freezing Black might give. The Elect hands as well would be hindered, as even before transforming, Kotaro is shown to have an extreme resistance to high voltage attacks, something that should certainly be greatly enhanced in his rider form. So that's 2 hands down, and I'd have to take the radar hands used as missiles out too. For the grand majority of Gorgon's mutants' had range projectile attacks, Black got damn good at evading. But though Super 1's ranged abilities are negated, Black doesn't have the extensive martial arts training that Super 1 does. Meaning in hand-to-hand, Super 1 would both dominate Black's more direct manner of attack, and leave fewer holes in his defense Black could exploit into an opening, which would lead to Black unleashing his Rider Punch Kick combo. So overall, at this time, Super 1 is stronger. Against Stronger, however, well, I've already explained my reasoning to Black's electricity resistance, and as most of Stronger's abilities have his electrical charge to them, they would not be as effective, and Kotaro is shown to be a bit more capable in a fight than Shigeru, who relied a lot on his cybernetics, so Black wins out. V3 is a tough one to judge, as Shiro does have a hell of a lot of abilities. V3's red lamp power would deflect an offensive use of the Kingstone Flash, but Black is more capable of evasion than the Kaijin the third rider fought. I think it would come down on where Black would strike with a rider kick, as if he hit any of V3's damage-reducing areas, he would be off balance long enough for V3 to strike back. So overall, it would feel like it would result in a stalemate. I'm giving the rate up to Black, though, as a tie with much fewer abilities in his roster is a notable feat. Black's armor providing him protection against quite a few Kaijin with sharp claws and teeth, specifically the bout with the red Salamander Mutant, which has much longer teeth than Amazon's jaw, is why I'm saying that he'd likely beat out Amazon as well. The Jungle Rider's fighting style, being more savage than what Black was used to fighting, would make it a more even bout with him, but the Kingstone Flash could blind Amazon long enough for the opening Black needs to go for his finishers. And there is a similar reasoning with Kamen Rider X. Though the Rydell's sword form has been shown to be strong, Black's armor greatly improves his defense over that of the other riders. And fencing swords like X's are not shown to be strong in piercing armor, or that capable in slashing through anything. Suffice it to say, most of the Rydell's abilities would be rooted out one by one as well, and without that advantage, X's abilities scale down quite a lot. So, by the end of his series, Black was handily the second strongest rider of his era, knocking X off of the top 5. However, Kotaro Minami's story did not end with the rider riding off into the sunset like the others. Kamen Rider Black was such a rating success, they decided to continue onwards into a direct sequel, which showed how Kotaro chose to live his life after every pillar of it was destroyed by Gorgon. So prepare yourselves to shine with the child of the sun, Kamen Rider Black RX!